How's it going, everybody? I like that. That was great. So for those of you who do not know me, because I know we have a lot of new faces over the last few months, my name is Donnie. I'm part of our teaching team here. I lead a small group, and I love the Bible. If you guys can't tell, my Bible is very, very well loved. It is falling apart at the seams. The Bible's not actually, it's not even attached to the binding anymore. I have re-put it together several times, and it won't hold up anymore. But I love the Bible, and I love talking about the Bible in context. So I'm going to kind of jump straight into my message, mostly because, man, I like to go into an absurd amount of detail with everything, and so I want to have as much time to do that as I can. So that teaching text we just read is out of the book of Exodus. And I kind of want to give you guys a little bit of context for where this story is coming from, because it's going to come up through this passage. It's going to come up later. So Exodus is the second book in the whole Bible. It's pretty early on in the whole story. And at this point in history, Israel is enslaved in Egypt. They've been enslaved there for about 400 years now or so. Now, the whole reason they went down to Egypt not as slaves, but as honored guests. There's this guy named Joseph, who was one of Jacob's sons. There was this really awful famine, and he basically saved the whole known world from starving at the time. And so the Israelites, they moved into Egypt, and they were allowed to settle in this land and basically have a home, and they grew as a people. A few decades passed, and a new Pharaoh came into power who was not as favorable to them as the Pharaoh Joseph had served under. And so he basically said, hey, you're all on my land. You belong to me now. You're my labor force. And so Israel spent several hundred years as slaves in Egypt. And it was not, there's varying different types of slavery you'll see throughout the Bible. This is probably some of the worst you will see. They are treated terribly under Egypt. And after 400 years along comes this guy Moses. And there was a whole purge where the Pharaoh did not want any male Israelite children born, so he basically had all of them killed. And Moses' mother weaved a basket of reeds and sent him floating down a river, and he ended up getting adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. And so this guy Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace as a member of Pharaoh's family. And after 40 years in Pharaoh's family, he went out, was expecting the fields, was walking around, and he sees a Egyptian overseer beating an Israelite. And Moses decides to take action on himself, and he steps in and he kills the Egyptian overseer. And now he has committed a crime, and he is now a criminal because he just murdered an Egyptian. So he takes off. He runs off into the night, and he goes out into the middle of nowhere, and he spends the next 40 years living as a shepherd in the middle of nowhere. So this dude spent 40 years as a prince, 40 years now as a shepherd, herding sheep, which if you guys know anything about sheep are dumb and smelly. Not a great glamorous transition halfway through life. Moses is now 80 years old when we come to Exodus chapter 3. If you guys want to open up your Bibles, I'm going to read the whole thing because that's how I roll. Now, Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him. Angel of the Lord is like Old Testament slang for the presence of God. Like, God just showed up. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Then he said, do not come near, take your sandals off your feet, for the place which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, but I will. And he said, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you, that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, etc. I'm going to cut it off there because that's enough for now. That's a pretty odd statement, I feel like, for Moses to go to God and be like, God, what's your name? What am I supposed to tell them? Because historically, if you look at the time, who here has any sort of familiarity with like polytheistic mythologies? Greek, Roman, Egyptian? Some. So these societies, especially the Egyptians, are one of like the biggest people of this. They did not believe in God. They believed in many little g gods. And every one of these, gods had a name and a domain of what were they god of. And so in Egypt, like one of their prime gods was Ra, the god of the sun. And Ra would have been like, he's like the head honcho. So like if you look at Greek mythology, you'd have like Zeus, big man on top. If you guys have seen Hercules, that's Hercules' dad. But so, like, historically speaking and, like, contextually at the time, he's like, who are you? Like, who are you? Like, what are you the god of? What is your name? Like, what am I supposed to tell these people? I can't just say, like, some god sent me to them to free you. And God responds with, I am that I am. And this name is really important. That phrase, like, I am, that translates to, that's where we derive the word Yahweh. Like, that is the name of God. And what he is communicating through that statement is that God defies categorization or labels, that he is not a God of a single domain. He is God of all. He is his own thing. And so where Ra would be God of the sun, but he's just the sun God. Yahweh is everything. He is the supreme absolute God. That anything else is just a pale imitation of what he truly is, that they're just idols made by human hands. And so this name, I'm going to take a step into the historical context before I introduce you to who the great I am is through his actions. But this name that God gives for himself, Yahweh, this name has been treated as holy throughout all of history. So the Jewish people and the Israelites, they would not say it out loud. It was big no-no. It was considered almost profane to speak God's name with your mouth because he is so holy and so far above us, and they wanted to honor and see him rightly and respect him. They wouldn't say it. And they wouldn't even write the whole name out when they would had the Bible, they had their books. They would not translate the full name. They would leave out all the vowels, or they would add the vowels of another word to remind them, hey, don't say this. When you read the text, you leave this blank, or you say a different word here. You say the word, I think it's Adonai is the word they use. And that effectively translates to Lord. So when you read the Bible and you come across the words the Lord in all caps, if you were reading a Hebrew text, that would read as Yahweh. When you see the Lord, all caps in the Bible, that is a placeholder because we have continued on that tradition. And that is actually that is where God's name would be written. We've just translated as Lord, the Lord. And so this name has been treated as sacred and holy throughout all things. He is the great I am. That he is all things, that he is the creator, the arbiter, the master of all reality. That he defies the categorization that man tries to put to the things they worship. And this is really important because our worldview as humans, we are finite. We are not infinite. We don't even have the actual capacity mentally to have an objective view of the world as it exists. We can only view the world relative to other things. And so mankind historically, we ascribed divinity to objects or phenomena or forces because we have no other thing to contextualize what the power of God would look like. And even in how God appears to us, we're finite. So he appears to us in the form of a burning bush. And later when he appears to all of Israel, when he fulfills his promise and they come and worship God on this mountain, he descends on the mountain as a burning cloud, which is super cool. I would have loved to have been there to see that because an entire mountain that's just burning with the presence of the Lord sounds really cool. But he is above those categorizations because he is beyond what we can actually think. We cannot put him into a box. And all other gods that mankind has devised are put into a box. This is what they do. You have the god of dead people. You have the god of battle, the god of wisdom, the god of the sky. And they're all losers. Because Yahweh is the God of gods, the God of everything. He is I am. He simply is what he is. And that's the name Moses is told to give to the people of Israel. That is the name that has been honored and respected and elevated throughout all of history. And so after this, Moses kind of continues to talk with God back and forth. And he's like, but God, I'm not that great. I can't do it because, I'm just a dude and I kind of have a speech impediment. And I murdered a guy and I'm unworthy. And God just goes, who said you're unworthy? I'm telling you to do this. That makes you worthy. So go. And then begins the story of the Exodus, which is where we get the word of the book Exodus. And so I'm going to abbreviate this because this is half the whole book, and it's a very long book. It would take over an hour to just read the whole thing. So Moses goes before Pharaoh, and he basically says, hey, God said you got to let my people go. And Pharaoh, being like, cool, I don't want to lose my workforce. That sounds like a terrible idea. I'm not going to do that. And so Moses performs a miracle in front of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh goes, that's interesting. I'm still not going to do it. And then Moses is told by God to say, hey, I'm going to send plagues on you until you release my people. And what follow are the 10 plagues. I say plagues, they are not diseases per se. It's just they're blights upon the land and the people. And the 10 plagues are really, really cool because they show God's power in action. And some of them are really goofy, and some of it's cool. There's just frogs everywhere. There's just an abundance of frogs to the point we can't do anything. And some of them are horrifying, where it's cool. Moses goes up and strikes the Nile and the entire Nile River, which is the lifeblood of Egypt. They're in a desert, everything's dry, everything's hot, it's their only source of water, and the Nile turns to blood. That's kind of horrifying. There's a swarm of locusts that comes in, and locusts, if you don't know what they are, they're basically like grasshoppers, but super duper awful, and they eat everything. So every ounce of grain and food and produce, the thing that people will eat so that they won't starve to death. This swarm of locusts comes and eats all of it. And each of these plagues, each of these things that they do, the things that God is striking at are actually symbols of different Egyptian gods. And so these are not random. So when he strikes the Nile and the Nile turns to blood, guess what? The goddess of the Nile is one of the highest gods in Egyptian culture because she's the life giver for their whole nation. And the last two plagues are the biggest, the scariest, and they're what makes Pharaoh let the people go. Because the first one is God blots out the sun. And I'm not talking like cool 8-minute solar eclipse. He blocks it out for days. Just darkness over the entire land. And God's saying, I'm bigger than your strongest God. He's nothing to me. I am. And then Pharaoh goes, I might let him go. Nah. Because you see, in Egyptian culture, Pharaoh is worshipped as a god. He's a god king. He's effectively like a god amongst men. And so he is the leader of Egypt. And he goes, no, I am the protector of my people. I'm not scared of this. And so God sends the plague of the firstborn, which is where we get the Passover from. And effectively, God basically warns the people of Israel, and they hang a lamb outside their door, but God sends the angel of death. And the firstborn of every animal and every human, their firstborn child, they all drop dead overnight, including Pharaoh's son. And so that's God striking at Pharaoh directly, and that is what makes Pharaoh go, cool, get out. I want you gone. And it's to the point that the Egyptians want the Israelites gone so much in fear of their God that they give them gold and jewelry and money to leave. They give them they give their slaves their valuables and send them out with all haste. Well, a few minutes later, Pharaoh kind of goes, I'm actually kind of mad my son is dead, and you just took all of our money. Maybe we shouldn't let them go. And so he rallies his army and they begin to chase Israel. And the Israelites are kind of not having it because they've been on a bit of a roller coaster ride over the last few days. Because over the last 10 days, God keeps doing these miracles. But the Egyptians keep treating them worse. And so a lot of the Israelites, they don't know how to feel about this. Because they're, I am Yahweh. He is doing all these miracles. He's showing off these great things. But things are kind of getting worse for them. And then they get better, and they're leaving, and then the army's coming to kill them. And they have been slaves for 400 years. Not a single one of them is a warrior. Not a single one of them knows how to defend themselves. And they are backed up against the Red Sea. They are on this peninsula. They can't go anywhere. They are cornered in by chariots and war horses and soldiers. And God parts the sea. The sea splits down the middle, and they walk across on dry land with giant towering walls of water on either side. And they walk safely to the other side, and then God closes the ocean and destroys Pharaoh because Pharaoh decided to pursue them into the parted sea. And they walked across an ocean on dry land. And that is the God of Israel. And that's so little of his power. That is nothing. Because the God of Israel, Yahweh, he created the universe. You guys, who here likes astronomy? I love astronomy. I love space. Do you guys know how big the sun is? Incalculably large. I was flying on an airplane a few weeks ago, and I was looking down at the earth, and I was thinking, man, everything is so darn big. And at the same time, our planet is nothing but a pale blue dot. We are insignificant. Our planet is an insignificant speck in the macro scale of the cosmos. We are not even a drop of the sun. And the sun isn't even a big star. And there's trillions of stars. There's billions in our galaxy alone, and there's billions of galaxies. And God is so massive and so powerful that he can hold the entirety of space, the whole universe, all of time, everything that has ever happened and ever will happen, fits in the palm of his hands comfortably. That all the force that creates a star, the force that just a tiny bit of it would annihilate our planet, he has all that power and more. And he used it to save a group of slaves. He is not the power he holds or what he does, or any one thing. He is not just a God of creation, or the God of one specific people, or a God of deliverance or hope. He just is. He is Yahweh. He is the great I am. Every time I think about it, my head explodes. Because I am finite, and he is infinite. And that kind of like brings me around. Like, I love the Bible, I love studying the Bible, but if we just study the Bible and then we don't do anything with it, none of it matters. It's like being a caterpillar, and you keep eating and eating and eating, and you get really, really fat, but if you never turn into a butterfly, you miss the point. And so how does God's name, the great I am, how does his power and his wonder and his sheer enormity affect us here and now? Because the story of the Exodus happened thousands and thousands of years ago. This isn't a recent story. And there's two ways that it affects us. And the first of which is it shows us that we as humans, we have a faulty view of God a lot of the time. We put him in a box. And sometimes it's not through any intent of our own. I'm just as guilty as everybody in this room of doing it. Because we are finite. We lack the capacity to fully see him as he is. He just is. The finite cannot grasp the infinite. We still have to try. Because if we don't, we will always leave God in the box. But there are so many people in this room who look at the situations in our lives, and then we say, God can't do anything about that. God can't do anything about my depression. God can't do anything about my family situation. God can't do anything about the fact that I'm lonely. God can't do anything about the fact that I'm failing my classes. God can't do anything about all the awful things happening in the world right now. We look at the world and we feel like there's no hope for our lives or the lives of the people around us or the world because we don't see God rightly. And we have put him in a box. We put him in the box of God is the God of church, and he's the God who makes me feel better about myself, but then I go out into my daily life and he doesn't actually have power there. And that is the lie we buy into. But God is not the God of Christians. He is not the God who was father of Jesus. He is the great I am. He is those things, but he is infinitely more because he is not bound or constrained by a label. He does not have a single domain. He is God of everything. And so he can free you from your depression. He can beat your anxiety. He can free the slaves that still live in the world now. He has the power. And that brings me to my second point. What can we do about it? And I'm going to kind of sidestep into a message we've taught a few times here before, but we are made in the image of God. We are not just apes on this earth. God breathed life into us directly, and we were made in his image. And so while we are finite, we are made in his image. His name, he's the great I am. And so we, just like we put God in a box, we put ourselves in a box. And we put each other in boxes. And we, as humans, we are relative beings. We compare everything to something else. And so I go, cool, I'm the sports guy. I'm the quarterback for my football team, and I'm better than the quarterback from this other school. And that's how I view myself. And that is wrong. Or we might view ourselves as someone who struggles with depression. We might view ourselves as our sexual identity. That's a huge thing in our society right now, where our culture says that's the most important thing about you, and that is a lie. You are made in the image of God, and just like he is what he is, you are what you are. That you are made in the image of God, and you are made to be individual and unique and like nothing else in all of creation. And that we all have skills and talents and abilities that is unique to us. And just like God called to Moses at the burning bush and said, you are to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go, God did not act without the use of one of his people. And Moses' objection was, I'm not your guy. I'm not good at talking. I'm a murderer. I'm like, I am not worthy to do this. Send someone else. He put himself in a box, and God said, no, you do it. Because God knows who we are better than we know ourselves, because he is infinite. He is the creator of us. He knows who he created you to be. He knows he created me to be. And so just like he is the great I am, you are the only you. And so where the rubber meets the road on this is God is calling everyone in this room to something. And just like he used Moses to bring the people out of Egypt, he wants to use your life to work good in this world. He wants to use you to free people from pain, suffering, anxiety, depression, loneliness. There are slaves in this world. Maybe he's going to send you to work with people who have been trafficked one day. But right now, we're all putting ourselves in boxes. We are saying what we can and can't do. I guarantee there are people in this room who have gone to their friends or have had the thought they feel like they're supposed to share what they believe or something encouraging with their friends, and they go, I can't do that. And you have put yourself in a box. And there are people in this room who are struggling under the labels they've put on themselves or they've put on others have put on them. That they are unworthy, that they are unloved, that they are not clean. And that is a lie. And what God wants out of all of you tonight is he wants first to turn your eyes to see him rightly. That he is Yahweh, the great I am, the creator of the universe, the architect of everything, and you. And he wants you to ask him, how does he see you? And what does he want you to do? So, Father, I thank you for everybody in this room. I thank you for every ear and every heart in this place. And I ask that if there are any lies that people are believing in this place, if that there are labels that are on people's minds and on their hearts, and they are believing what the world has said about them, what people have said about them, what they have said about themselves, Lord, that you would part that veil. That as we go into a time of worship and response, that they would have a burning bush moment with you. That you would silence their objections. That you would put down the labels they have ascribed to themselves or have been ascribed to them. That you would show them who you created them to be. That you would encourage every heart in this room right now. And that if there is anyone in this room who has actions that they feel like they are supposed to take, but they have not because they feel they are not capable, or they are not ready, or they are not worthy, Lord, I pray that you would destroy those doubts and that you would be with every person in this room. That just like you did not send Moses into Egypt alone, that you walk with everyone in this place. So I ask that you would just help clear the haze in our minds. That you would tear down the labels that we have ascribed to ourselves. And that you would tear down the labels that we have ascribed to you, Jesus. That we would be able to give you glory in this place. Through our worship, through our actions, and through our very lives. In your mighty name we pray, Lord. Amen.